Gawin Presidency.
So one of the bigger problems in America and just overall in the world today, which is obvious, is is climate change. So we seek to find a policy to help find specific ways to reduce our carbon imprint and save the world.
Yeah, so the biggest way that, well, there's two ways that we want to actually reduce our carbon footprint, and one of the two ways is by simply improving our current way that we do it in the world. So now, as you can see, we use coal a lot. It makes up almost the majority of our energy, and it actually makes up the majority of our carbon emissions that we make from our energy, about 80%. So we want to focus on improving our current infrastructure that we have. So basically what we want to do is essentially clean coal. So we want to encourage essentially countries so that they can adopt ways that they are able to make coal cleaner, and so that we are able to reduce emissions with coal and significantly reduce the amount that we end up putting into the atmosphere, and end up actually improving the world and improving our output and our carbon footprint. So, so as you can see, yeah, it makes up a huge amount. At least in the US, it makes up 50%. In the world, it makes up 40%. And it makes up the majority. So that's the first way that we want to focus on reducing our carbon footprint. And we have a video here that can talk about that.
Now turning to China's energy structure, although China has been making efforts to promote clean energy, coal consumption still dominates its energy structure. According to BP's statistical review of world energy, coal accounted in 2012 for 68.5% of the country's total energy consumption. Almost 18% of its energy use came from oil, and less than 5% came from natural gas. Nuclear and hydroelectricity and renewable energy together accounts for around 9% in the country's energy structure. Now compared with the previous 2 years, China's dependence on coal has seen a slight drop.
Okay, so as we can see, countries like China use coal even more than we do. And so on a global scale, this is incredibly important that we're able to try to clean coal in countries like China that, as many of you know, do not have methods to be able to reduce their carbon footprint. And so what essentially we need to do is encourage countries like China and every nation really to start adopting methods so that we're able to, if not reduce the amount that we use coal, at least clean the current coal that we have, and yeah, end up at least trying to curb climate change.
So cleaning coal, this is kind of like the science behind it, which we don't need to go into, but and also carbon capture are two ways that we can do this. But like as you can see, there's multiple steps, and it's super intricate and like complex, and it's going to be really expensive. And in order to like come up with ways to clean coal and capture carbon, it's going to cost a lot up front. And so that's going to scare away a lot of people from doing it, but it's like ultimately the costs are going to be like much lower than the benefits. Like as you can see, when we use clean coal, like we're no longer gonna have to pay the disposal fees or the fuel costs, the permitting costs, and we're gonna get like credits back and things like that. So ultimately, like in the long run, you're gonna see it benefiting us financially also. Same thing with carbon capture, how like upfront it's very like intimidating the cost, but ultimately like we're going to be saving money.
Alright, and one of the other things that is as an alternative to coal is natural gas. For one, as she mentioned, as clean coal is cheaper, natural gas is also a whole lot cheaper due to the spike in oil prices, which you can see around 2008 really spiked up. So natural gas not only is better for the environment, but it's also better for the economy. But in addition to that, natural gas produces 50% less carbon dioxide. and it is actually the least carbon intensive fossil fuel.
So our policy specifically, like laid out, is divided into 4 parts. One, we're going to drive down the price of renewable energy solutions and make it easier for countries with lower GDP to adopt them, so like the smaller countries. And then we're going to give grants to developing nations so that they can research and implement better technology and more renewable energy. And an important part of it is we're going to be the example of using the renewable technology by doing it ourselves and showing how it benefits us so that they will want to follow our lead. And then we're going to influence the environmental policy of smaller countries through like the United Nations. So, yeah. One thing that's important like to do this is to think about how money really influences the way people think and how it influences our actions also. So we need to find ways how we can make wind power a lot cheaper, and that's going to be talked about through like putting in money for research, and then also subsidizing solar panel production. If we do that, it's going to lower the price, and then people will want to invest more in it.
All right, and so we talked about forming the United Nations as a medium for people to talk about the different ways that they can handle the renewable energy issues. So I'm not sure you guys are aware of this, but in December 2015, there was a huge conference in Paris where several different countries came together to discuss different forms of renewable energy and different goals we can meet by certain time periods. And so it's just one example of ways that we can have further interactions between large countries with large GDPs and small other world countries so that we can have more of a coherent policy that's not just targeting large nations such as China and the United States, but also looking towards developing nations so they don't end up like large nations, like with the problems that we have with large nations today.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about the research and grants that we're trying to put forward in our policy. And so a large nation like the U.S., we have a huge treasury that we can spend, and we're able to use that to essentially incentivize other countries to be able to use renewable forms of energy or to use more efficient forms of non-renewable resources. And so essentially what we're going to do is give grants to countries or try to, companies within countries so that they're able to do both of these, is both improve their current non-renewable resources and and to at least start adopting more renewable resources. And one important thing to know is that you can't force countries to do anything necessarily through the UN. You can simply encourage them. But what you can do is you can try to incentivize them to start adopting policies. And that's really the best way that you're able to get countries to start doing things that are better for the environment, because essentially they really only want to look out for themselves. And so once we start implementing stuff like grants and start funding research and start having more renewable resources and start lessening the cost of that, essentially it's going to be cheaper for countries to start using this instead of not as efficient non-renewable resources. So essentially what we're going to be doing is making it easier for these countries to start adopting all of these.
Yeah, this is just going back to how putting in research and our time and money into it now is going to be a large upfront cost again, but this kind of shows that using fossil fuels will only just rack up a ton of money that we're gonna have to pay. And it doesn't look like that immediately, but over time these will all be cheaper, both financially and relatively.
Okay, so now we get to the fun part of the class discussion. All right, guys, so has anyone ever heard of Tuvalu, by any chance? No? Really? It's a pretty, okay, it's a tiny country, population of 10,000 people. It's actually, it's off the coast of Australia, I want to say. It's up near the, off the coast of Australia, we'll stick with that. So it's an extremely tiny country. as you guys can imagine. And unfortunately, as you can see that picture on the left-hand side there, it's going to be completely submerged within 25 years if we continue at the current rate of glacier melting. So pretty bad idea, right? Pretty bad thing. And so what I'm gonna do with you guys is I'm gonna take, go to the camera, I'm gonna split half of you guys. Who wants to be Tuvalu? I'm not gonna tell you the alternatives yet. This side, okay, thank you. This side's gonna be Tuvalu. Alright guys, you guys are gonna be this island nation, population 2,000 people. You're representing, by the way, it's like 50-50 split, 50 guys, 50 girls. Like, well, that's actually the population statistics for the island, so interesting fact there. So you guys are Tuvalu, and then the other half of you guys are going to be British Petroleum. Alright, and so you guys are much larger. I mean, the number of people in BP is more than 7 times the number of people on that island. Crazy, right? You guys operate over 70 plus countries. You have 79,000 employees, and your economic value generated by BP every year annually is $227.9 billion. Pretty nice, right? Good salary. So, so what I'm gonna do with you guys is I'm gonna pose you guys some questions. I'm gonna give you guys some time in groups quickly, we'll give you guys about 2 minutes-ish to discuss how you would each answer the side of the question. And then we'll come together, and at the end we'll see if we can compromise on our policy here. So let's get to the meat of this stuff. Here's the question. So first of all, for the Tuvalu people, which kind of renewable energy is best, do you think is best sorted, is best suited for this kind of island nation and given your current economic